Hassel here, co-host of the Nerdy Man Room Show. We proudly present to you Man Room Shorts. Your discretion is advised.
Yeah, well, speaking of moving on, we'll move on to something Spider-Man related. We've got some movie and TV news here, and first one is going to be a quick spoiler-free review of Morbius. I did get to go watch it this weekend. I don't think you've seen it yet, have you?
I am waiting till that is a streamable, viable asset, or that you put it on Vudu for free.
Yeah, that's probably the best thing to do because this was the second round of a Batman movie this year that was just not a successful Bat person movie. uh, I watched it for to sit down and watch this if this was on TV or on Sci-Fi or I was just sitting at home and turning it on Vudu or something. It would have been an okay movie. It felt outdated. It felt like a 1990s superhero movie trying to be made in today's world. Out of 10, I rated it a 6.5, and that's being generous because of a couple of points I'll get to at the end. But negative wise, the plot of this movie was short. It was short on story elements. There was a lot of plot holes. It's a fairly short runtime, something like an hour 40, hour 45, but it felt long because it just drug out certain things. And at the same time, I was like, well, this movie would have been better if you'd have put this and this in it that explained part of the story. It still could have been an hour 45, but they left out parts of the story to put something random in there. Or they left out, it felt like they just cut and edited things out. They're like, how did this happen? How did we get to this point? It's like, oh, people slept for 3 days or something, I guess, because we're 3 days later and we don't know what's going on. It was very weird in that aspect. And that was the biggest negative for me. Is like it was hard. It wasn't that it was hard to follow. It's just they were trying to tell you the exact story they wanted to tell you so quickly they cut out all the filler and all the information you needed to get from point A to point B.
But do you feel like if you get a director's cut, like maybe somewhere down the pike, that it might be a little better? Because this movie kept
It
going
could be.
back for like reshoots, or it kept being delayed due to editing, or I'm sure editing. If it's that choppy, you almost have to
I,
expect
I,
editing. But
Maybe so. The neutral point of the review that I had for it was, Jared Leto as Michael Morbius was, eh. I mean, he tried to play the character, and there's times when he plays the character well, like, Michael Morbius is a sickly guy to begin with, but not so sick that he's not egotistical and thinks highly of himself because he's so smart. So he wanted you to be real sympathetic when he was sickly, and then when he got powers and trying to figure things out, there's a part of him that should be a sympathetic character because he's been transformed by his own avarice into something, monstrous. But you only get that in little smidgens, and the rest of the time it's kind of like he's just there and he's being a smart aleck and he's making jokes and stuff. I'm like, that doesn't
that
fit
was a
him.
thing through the previews I kept seeing, like the one where he's like, "Oh, I'm just kidding. You're Doctor Michael Morbius." I'm like, no, Michael Morbius does not throw out quips. He is not Spider Man.
Now, and
He is
that scene's not even in
a
there.
very arrogant, spirit of vengeance type character.
Yeah, and that scene is in there, but the lines are cut differently, and he doesn't even say the same thing he does in the preview for that.
Oh wow.
Now he does make the Venom remark, but he does not. And this is not a spoiler because it's been in the previews. But he makes the Venom remark, but he does not say, "No, I'm just kidding. I'm Michael Morbius." He just get out of here because he's taking these guys' place.
Is there an after credit scene in this movie? Is it worth
Yes,
sitting?
there are two after credit scenes now.
Oh, he's
While they're
sad.
while they're entertaining for the face value of they're still trying to do something here with a Sony Spider-Man verse, for lack of a better term, even though they have no Spider-Man. They are also extremely lazily put together. It's like,
Wow.
oh, let's not expand upon this after credit scene we're building. Let's just use some pre-existing stuff to help this after credit scene, and then just do a couple of shots and say, hey, we did it. That's what it
Oh
felt like.
wow. Okay.
I don't call them negatives because they were interesting to see where they're going with them, but it was just like you guys really didn't put much effort into it. You just kind of, we know this is over here, so
Well,
let's
I mean,
just use
without
that.
spoilers, you know where they're going. They're going towards a Craven movie. They're going towards Venom 3. And they've already shit the bed and said they're not going to fool with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man 3 at all. It's not happening. That's their
Yes.
Spider-Man. So I mean, you hear rumors of a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 4 being greenlit, but Raimi has already said the only way he'll do it is if it's his Spider-Man story progressing the way he wanted it to.
Well, and even with these after credit scenes, they don't lead you into any of those other movies. They try to connect those movies, saying, "Hey, what are we going to do with Craven coming up? What are we going to do with Venom coming up?" So they're trying to build something there, but they're not trying to say, "Here's what connects these movies." They're trying to say, "Hey, you're going to have all these characters. Guess what we can do later?" That's what they're building up to.
Would you give it a DS Warden or an Excelsior?
Neither. It wasn't terrible. I'll be honest with you. If I got to rate this and say what's the worst comic movie I've seen this year, I still say the Batman.
Oh wow!
I think this still beats it, but very small smidgen. And the reason I think it does, here's the positives I got out of it. Matt Smith, fantastic villain. He played the part perfectly. He played it exactly how it should have been played, considering what that character went through. And you saw bits and pieces of how he was very energetic when he was the Doctor. You saw that with him as a villain, and that was pretty neat to see.
Well, that's the thing. He was the Doctor. Whether you like, he was your Doctor or not. He was the Doctor. So I'll give most anything with him a chance. I mean, I even like the shitty Terminator movie he was in. So
he did that as the villain in this movie, and he was fantastic at it. And the other good thing I will say is the visuals they did on this movie. The movie itself felt like an older style comic movie, but the visuals felt modern. There's one of them that's a little weird. Like when he moves around, there's like this misting, streaming after effect, which kind of makes sense for a vampire, but they do it a little. It looks cool for a few scenes when he's fighting and stuff, but they did it so much it would get on your nerves at times. It's like, will you stop doing that so I can see what's going on?
I feel like the radar effect was what you was going to get sick with before it was all said.
Oh, that was actually really cool. That was actually really cool. And I will say this as a slight spoiler. So if anybody doesn't want to hear this, skip ahead a couple minutes. But like when he would activate his radar sense and stuff, they would go to like his ears and they would kind of elongate a little bit, and you could see all the hairs inside of his ear actually stand up on end and move around like he's using the hearing. Because that's the hairs in your ears are there to assist in hearing, right? To carry the vibrations. You would see that happening, and then you would see the sonar wasn't bad. It was just the misting effect when he would move around. Sometimes it would get a little bit on your nerves. For anybody who wants to hear spoiler review of it and get my exact same thoughts, because I could not have in any way expressed it any better, go watch Black Nerd Comedy on YouTube with Andre. His review of it is 100% exactly how I felt, but he explains it in much more detail than I'm trying to avoid doing here for a spoiler-free review. But it was what it was. It wasn't terrible. I would have rather seen it at home than I would have on the big screen, just because it just wasn't worth the extra money to go.